So we've talked about finding the notes. And now let's talk about this other part that's the responsibility of the bass player, which is rhythm.
Yeah.
So if you have notes, i.e. harmony, and you weave them through a cool rhythmic pattern, you get what's called a groove. And that is what makes people's heads bop and people dance, and it's a very important bit of what a bass player does, together with the rest of the so-called rhythm section, if there is one, which would be drummers and guitar players and maybe ukulele players.
Yeah.
And and it's the whole, everybody is in on this groove together, and you as a bass player, you are the foundation and you are driving it. And let's say, for example, we have a lovely U2 song, With or Without You.
Yep.
And you might be asked to play that song, and you go online and you find a chord chart with the notes above the lyrics.
Yeah, that's common.
That's very common. It's not an ideal way to learn a song, but if you know the song, it works pretty well. And I'm going to show you just some very basic rhythms and some things that you can do when you are faced with such a chord chart. Now, obviously, this song has a set bass line. This song does what's called utilize pumping eighth notes, or just an eighth note pattern. And I will show you that, but I'll also show you a very simple way to get you started, and also another way that you can use that is, you know, when you're improvising, or just a really basic pattern that works in a lot of situations. When we're talking about rhythm, we could talk all day long about styles, and, you know, a bossa and a samba and a reggae. They all have different rhythmic requirements, but this is just a really good way to get you started.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at our With or Without You song, and you will see on the chord chart, you'll see a D. You find your D, you know, count your way up, find your D. You can also use the open string. Then you find your A, which is below here, or here, if you will. Then you find your B, and then you find your G. All right, so you find your notes first. I'm gonna play them up here: D, A, B, and G. And now what do we do with rhythm? So there is in rhythm something that's called meter, and that's how you count it out. And you have danced before, you are feeling the rhythm. When you are listening to a song, your body will automatically start to feel where the downbeat is, which is the heavy part of the beat, and that's where you come in. And this is a way to just very basically play through the chord changes with what's called whole notes. A whole note in a 4/4 meter, that means I count to 4 before I start over, is a good way to get you started. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. A, 2, 3, 4. B, 2, 3, 4. G, 2, 3, 4. Now in this song, what the bass player plays, it's a little more than that. So again, this is a great way to get you started. You count to 4, you look at the chord chart, you look where the lyrics are changing, off you go. Sometimes you might also see a little bit of a better chart, just called some sort of a lead sheet that might have bar lines. Bar lines, they are just straight lines that compartmentalize the rhythm into these bars, just as Magnus was saying.
Dividing.
Yes,
Dividing.
and if you see such a chord chart, it's actually even better, and we're showing you one right here, where you can see there's a D, and then there's a bar line, and then there's an A and a bar line, and a B minor. Don't worry about the minor yet, you just find your B and a bar line, and then it goes to the G and a bar line. And you always count to 4 until it sort of refreshes. Those are better charts because they tell you exactly how long you're gonna sit on one chord change, versus the lyric sheets where you really need to know the song at least a little bit. But it works, you know, we make it work. But now let's do what the song actually does, which is pumping eighth notes, and that creates a little bit more of a driving feel.
So pumping eighth notes, is that you put eighth notes in one bar?
Yeah,
so
why are they called eighth notes, right? What
you divide that whole note like in 8 equal chunks.
Yes. I mean, I could even divide it into the 4 beats. Like, let me do that for a second
yeah,
to just show that as a sort of interim step. So I was saying 1, 2. That's the whole note, right? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1. And now I'm going to play the quarter notes. 1, 2. I'm going to double this up and I get 8 notes. So that's a good way to approach this song. But let's say you want to learn a song where the bass line is not quite fleshed out yet. Maybe it's just more of a generic singer-songwriter situation. You just want to back somebody up. You tried whole notes. You already know a lot. You know whole notes, you know quarter notes, you know eighth notes. Magnus is going to show you a cool other version.
We're gonna combine different note values now. So we're gonna do something that's called a dotted quarter note, and we're gonna do an eighth note. And these combined sounds like this.
May I count over that? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Just play it one more time and then I start counting. I'm going to play eighth notes over that. Now, if you keep that as the rhythmic pulse against what Magnus is doing, you can count out the following.
So in the last example we played the dotted quarter note and the eighth note, but that only makes the first half of the bar, and the second half of the bar is a half note. So that's the rhythm combined.
Now we've shown you several ways how you can approach one of those lead sheets or chord charts that somebody might ask you to play to. You can just basically lay down a whole note, and if you're just starting out, I recommend you start that way because it gives you a really good ear where the chords change and how it all fits into the song. And you lay down the whole notes first, but then remember, you can play quarter notes, 4 beats per measure, or you can double that up and then play eighth notes, which is eight notes per measure. And then you can also play a combination with this dotted quarter note and an eighth note and a half note that Magnus was showing you. So a couple of options to start you off.